It's Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024. Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's go. Story number 1. The International Monetary Fund has lowered its global growth forecast for next year and warned of accelerating risks from wars to trade protectionism.
It says global output next year will be 3.2%, slightly down from its previous forecast, but it did say inflation will slow to 4.3% globally, down from 5.8%. However, Australia is one of only 2 major economies where inflation is expected to remain above 3%, 3.6% for 2025, according to the IMF. The other country, in case you're interested, Michael, is Slovakia. That comment triggered a bunch of criticism from the federal opposition yesterday. It also helps explain why we haven't seen any movements on interest rates from the Reserve Bank as yet. The IMF downgraded the growth outlook for Australia to 1.2% this year. It said the global risks are building to the downside. The big uncertainty, and this is on the back of the US election, are tariffs and trade policies. The IMF generally, it oversees 191 members. Its goal is to achieve growth and prosperity for all of those members.
And just quickly, Sean, the figures were released ahead of Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers heading off to Washington for G20, IMF and World Bank meetings.
Yes, very busy schedule. Things over there, I imagine, be very tense ahead of the US election on Tuesday week. Of course, Donald Trump is talking about 20% tariffs on everything. That won't help people at G20, IMF and World Bank. For Australia, we sell about $16 billion worth of goods to the US. They'd be affected. The outcome of the election is pretty critical for local companies, particularly around the Biden Inflation Reduction Act, spending on green energy. A lot of companies locally have benefited from that. That might be reduced under Trump. The AUKUS arrangement is critical to it, of course. Jim Chalmers will be over there pushing Australia's wares, but much does depend on the presidential poll.
All right, on to story number 2 now. Details of the alleged misleading conduct from Woolworths and Coles have been filed in the federal court. And Sean, there are hundreds of examples, but the big grocery chains claim that it's the suppliers who are driving the price changes.
Yeah, so the ACCC claims that a bottle of Dettol foam hand wash refill at Coles was discounted but still on the shelves for 35% more than its original price. Similar deal, bottle of Sprite at Woolies discounted but 34% more than the original price. The ACCC has accused the big 2 grocery chains of offering discounted prices on goods that had been previously marked up from their original shelf price. However, Coles and Woolies deny the allegations. They came out yesterday and said in nearly every case, suppliers had asked them to lift prices amid a sudden outbreak of high inflation. 2 sides to the story.
Yeah, indeed. Story number 3, Sean. The Fair Work Ombudsman recovered nearly $473 million for nearly 160,000 underpaid workers last financial year, with more than half of the back payments made by large corporate employers.
Yes, so that takes the last 3 years to about $1.5 billion. Last year, the Fair Work Ombudsman litigations led to about $21 million in court-ordered penalties. Big business remains a focus for the Ombudsman, though more than 3,000 small businesses received written advice on pay and entitlements. There were 15 enforceable undertakings, mostly around back pay, including companies like Best & Less, Starbucks, Optus, IAG, Eagers Automotive and World Vision Australia.
Okay, story number 4, Sean. The Australian investors are reportedly shifting away from putting their money into the Wall Street tech titans. These are companies like Apple, Nvidia, and Microsoft.
That's right. In the first 9 months of this year, Aussie investors put more than $1 billion into BlackRock's primary US equity exchange-traded fund, and that ETF has done well on the back of a 21% return for the S&P 500 so far this year. That's very much on the back of those big tech stocks. Now, Aussie investors are apparently wary. What would a Trump presidency look like, for example? Probably the focus would be on things like banks and energy, less on tech. Aussie investors are also thinking more about China as Beijing stimulates the economy. There's also greater demand for small caps, both in the US and Australia. Means investors are basically looking beyond the big tech names. They're taking some of their profits and investing them elsewhere.
Last one, story number 5, McDonald's share price fell 10% after US authorities linked a fatal E. coli outbreak to the fast food group's Quarter Pounder burgers.
It affected 10 states, 49 people attracted the bacteria, 10 ended up in hospital, 1 older patient died, unfortunately. All ate at McDonald's before falling ill. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said it appears connected to the consumption of Quarter Pounders. and the focus is on the fresh slivered onions and the beef patties. The worst hit states were Colorado and Nebraska. Of course, this is so widespread, it hit the share price of the company. McDonald's remains the biggest fast food store in the US, 13,000 stores. It also sells about $26 billion of fast food every year.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed, wherever you listen to podcasts. And also out today is the new episode of The Property Pendulum, brought to you by Domain and Fear and Greed. This week, we're looking at the 7 items that you should remove from your home before listing it. I'll put a link in today's show notes. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.